Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again. My name is Shuan, a student from the Faculty of Medicine. Welcome to You Alive. Today's event is organized by the NUS Office of Alumni Relations. The program today is in 3 sections. First, a 10-minute talk by our speaker, Mr. Daniel Boey. Next, a 20-minute interview with Mr. Visva Sadasivan, Chairman of the You Alive Organizing Committee. And finally, a 30-minute Q&A questions. If you wish to ask a question, please make your way to the microphones placed along the aisles, introduce yourself, and speak directly into them. This is essential so the online community is able to hear your question. Today, we will also be using Pigeonhole Live for our Q&A session. If you have a smartphone, tablet, or a laptop computer with you, just launch your internet browser and go to phlive.at. Key in our event passcode, which is UAlive. I repeat, it is UALIVE, UAlive, and click Go. Next, select the current session, which is UAlive featuring Mr. Daniel Boey. Once the site has loaded, feel free to fire away all your burning questions while also voting for any questions that interest you. You may vote for the questions by simply tapping on the arrow next to the question. The more popular questions with more votes will stand a higher chance of being answered by our speaker. Also, do remember to leave your feedback on the session via the Pigeonhole application after the show. Thank you for your kind attention. Without further ado, please sit back and enjoy.
You Alive.
Catwalk is a term that many of us are familiar with. We associate it with the visuals of beautiful models strutting the usually narrow and flat platform with famous international designer clothes. However, what's on the catwalk goes beyond the 15 minutes of fame and glamour.
I work very closely with the fashion designer to make sure that he or she realizes his vision on the catwalk. My script is the clothes. So if the designer comes to me and tells me, okay, my inspiration this season is, say, Moulin Rouge. So it's up to me to look for the right venue for him, to cast the right kind of models, work with the hair and makeup to come up with the right look for the designer, the right soundtrack, work with the DJ to come up with the right soundtrack, so that when people come and watch the show, the message of the designer is told through the presentation. When I do castings, I take into consideration what the designer requires, and then I speak to the agencies about bringing in the right girls or the right guys for me. A lot of designers do 2 collections, 4 collections, some of them even do 6 collections a year, and it's important that we tell the story of each collection of the designer to not only just the general public but to the press and the media as well, so that there's synergy overall.
Fashion director for 20 years, Daniel represents Singapore as one of the most creative show choreographers and one of the most sought-after show producers in Asia.
To be a fashion show producer, fashion director, like for myself, I don't have a social life. I constantly eat, think and dream fashion, and I'm always being inspired by things around me. So I have a notebook around with me all the time. I have a camera with me all the time, and I'm constantly taking pictures of things that inspire me, writing notes down, because I know that if I file it, I'll be able to use this inspiration. We also have to be able to love what you do, you know. It's not just about fashion. You have to have a love for all things theatrical. You have to have a love for all things beautiful. Anything that can possibly go wrong will probably go wrong, and you must have solutions for that. Lights can refuse to work, intercoms can refuse to work. A model who has a quick change may not be able to change fast enough, but you just have to be able to adapt and think on your feet. You know, if the model can't change in time, send the next model out. You know, if the intercom doesn't work, that's why handphones were invented. Don't talk to me before a show because I'm usually very focused and I only have one aim, which is to make sure that that show is the best show that I've ever done. With every single job, it's a collaborative effort. If a client comes to me and says, okay, this is what I want you to do, this is a guidebook, just do it for me, then I think I'm the wrong show producer for them. When you do a fashion show with 30 models and 29 of them turn up on time and you've got to wait half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours for the last model before you can start, it's not fair to the other 29. So, you know, if you don't appreciate the job, if you don't take your job seriously, then I'm sorry, there's no place for you in my show. To stage a very successful show, you've got to get a huge and a very talented team together because one weak link can spoil the entire show. You know, I'm just one person and it's impossible for me to just pull the whole show together, which is why I have a team, you know, so everybody has their own area of speciality, everybody comes together and it's teamwork, you know.
Having staged catwalks in almost every fashion city around the world, Daniel thinks that Singapore needs to nurture its very own slow-booming, but definitely talented fashion industry the right way.
You have to nurture the industry, you know, the industry cannot change overnight. It's amazing when you go to like Paris or London and you see shows and you ask them how much the budget is. Oh, you know, it's quite a small budget, it's just £500,000. And then you come to Singapore, you come to Asia and you get clients who say, oh, I love the Victoria's Secret show, I have $5,000, can you do it for me? You know, and $5,000 is the cost of one outfit. Like for the Haute Couture Week, for instance, it was such a groundbreaking event, not only because the concept was new for Asia, but designers that I truly believed in and I proposed to the committee, they found sponsors to actually pay for the designers to show, because if the designer cannot afford to pay for their show, then it's a sad thing. So I'm very blessed to be able to work with a lot of these people who think who have an international mindset. And I think in order for our industry to grow, we must have more people like that.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Daniel Boey.
Yeah, there it is.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thank you for having me here today. Yes, that was me in the video. I thought it would be quite useful to give you an idea of what I do, because last week when I was giving a talk, someone came up to me and stumped me with a question. They asked me, can you describe your work and tell me how you made your dent in the universe, to quote the late Steve Jobs. And that's a question that has stumped me for the past 25 years in which I've been doing this. What is my job description? Can I sum up everything I do in one sentence? I can't. I mean, I've been called many names in my life professionally. Okay, I've been called fashion director because I direct fashion shows. I've been called a stylist because I style. I've been called recently author. But what exactly do I do? You know, that was one question I asked myself when I was putting the book together with Marshall Cavendish as well. And all the questions led back to one word, which is a word that I think is overused, but I think it's a word that applies a lot to my career, and that word is passion. Okay, what exactly is passion? You know, I work in fashion. I'm not a fashion designer. Does that mean I have no passion for my work? I'm not one of those people who emerge from my mother's womb with a copy of Vogue in one hand and a copy of GQ in the other hand. In fact, if I was clutching anything, it was probably an Enid Blyton book. Because when I took this retrospective journey back into my life, I realized that my first passion was writing. All I wanted to do was just stay in the library and read and write. And then I discovered the theatre. And then I realized that, okay, I'm sorry, writing isn't as important to me right now. I want to add a voice to those words. And then I discovered music. And then I realized that it's not enough to just speak the words. I want to sing the words. And then I realized, okay, Passion might be the cornerstone of your entire existence for one part of your life. But life evolves and life moves on all the time. And I think that describes my life. When I went to university, what did I study? Geography, because I was good in it and was easy to pass exams. So that's a good reason to take a subject, right? Literature, because I enjoyed writing. And practical criticism. But I also discovered a new passion, which was beautiful, huge gala events. You know, I joined the hostel and took part in Rag and Flag. I designed and organized arts balls, the Nusu ball, the hostel balls. And that was a skill in which I realized helped me when I wanted to start a career in the fashion industry. See, until this time, the word fashion had not even featured in my life. Why did I end up in fashion? Because it was the first job offered to me in which I didn't have to write a resume. Simple, right? Now, timing is important as well. I had no passion in fashion. I went into fashion because it was the easy way out. But I entered the industry at a time when everyone called the golden age of Singapore fashion. That was a time when Singapore designers were considered the rock stars of the world, of the design world. Have you heard of the Magnificent Seven? Not the movie. Okay, our original Magnificent Seven was 7 Singapore designers who went around the world promoting Singapore fashion, the likes of Thomas Wee, Tan Yung, Celia Loan, let me see if I can get them all right, Esther Tay, Bobby Cheung, Kelvin Shu, and Peter Kor, 7. Okay, did you know that Singapore once hosted the Miss Universe competition? You do, so you're all quite old lah. Right. Okay, the Miss Universe competition took place at the Harbour Front, World Trade Center, which is where Vivo City stands now. Winner was Cecilia Bolocco. Singapore made top 9 or top 10. The first Singaporean to step foot on the stage of the Academy Awards wasn't a filmmaker, wasn't an actor, wasn't an actress, it was a model. 1987, Ethel Fong. She was a Giorgio Armani girl and she sat the stage with Lauren Bacall. The first Asian model to appear in a CoverGirl international campaign with Tyra Banks was a Singaporean, Nora Arifin. And at that stage in life, Singapore fashion was booming. And that was when I set foot in the industry. Now, when I started in the industry, I thought it was because of all these exciting things that happened that created this passion in me. But 25 years later, looking back, was it really the case? If you look at, for example, putting a fashion show together, it's no different from organizing a play or a musical. Instead of having a playwright, you've got your fashion designer. Your fashion designer is your playwright. Your clothes are the script. I'm the producer, I'm the director, and I take the clothes and I interpret them and I turn them into a production. Likewise, a fashion shoot. So I tell a story. And then it struck me, my passion actually isn't in fashion. My passion is in telling a story. My passion is in curation. You know, my passion is in putting creative geniuses from all different disciplines, pulling them together and creating a story. The architect Thomas Heatherwick said, creative industries nowadays are not about standalone blinkered creatives. The best and most exciting projects are when creatives get together and get into bed with each other and create beautiful things. So if that's the case, then I'm the pimp that pulls all the creatives together. That's my work. That's my job description. I'm a pimp. I'm a creative pimp, right? So yes, I have actually been nurturing my passion since the day I was born because all the skills that I learned writing, all the skills that I learned in theater, all the skills that I learned in music, you know, taking practical criticism in university taught me how to bullshit my way through presentations when I don't know what the hell is going on. These were skills that I honed, and these are skills that I've applied to my job today. So my message to you today is, if you have a passion, pursue it. If you're not sure that's what you want, pursue it anyway, because what you learn from that is going to help you in your future life, whether you realize it or not. I'm going to read a question that was asked to me last week. Okay, this is called Old Age. I've read your book, and I'm interested in how you circumvented the system that was unfriendly to what you wanted to do and came out tops. How can I apply that to what I want to do? Okay. when I was in university, okay, I'm sorry, NUS. When I was in university in my second year, at that point in time, I still had no idea what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. They introduced mass communication. Mass comm was something that was completely new in the university. When I read the synopsis of what the course was all about, I knew this was an elective that I wanted to take because I finally found my passion. I finally found what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And then I failed the aptitude test. University told me that I have no aptitude for mass comm, I should take econs instead, because even though I failed maths, right? But deep down inside, I knew that was what I wanted to do. So I pursued it. Because who knows, 25 years later, you might come back to NUS and you can rub it in their faces, right? So if you're really, really, really passionate about something, believe in it. But you have to know if your passion is something that you would die for, or your passion is just a passing ECA. Okay, for those who are too young to know what ECA is, it's called CCA now, right? Okay, so you've got to realize that if you're willing to die for it, you can turn that into a career. It's no bed of roses. Having a passion for something doesn't mean that you're gonna have an easy life. You know, you're gonna have to fight for it, you're gonna have to struggle. I graduated from NUS and I'm doing this. This is a completely unconventional career. You've got, you will get, people telling you that it's a stupid move. Why waste all your time studying? You get parents who keep asking you. Even my parents today ask me, when am I going to get a proper job? But if you truly believe in it and you make a difference to one person's life, I think truly you would have made that dent in someone's universe. And ultimately, that's why we're all working, isn't it? For ourselves, for self-gratification, and to make a difference to yourself and to someone else. Right? Yeah. Okay, with that, I think I'm quite lonely here on stage, so I'd like to invite Viswa up on stage.
Daniel, thank
Maybe
you.
we can have a little conversation.
Yes, we'll have.
Right.
You know, as I usually do, when I have a guest here, I do some capoing and digging.
Be
And
kind.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I asked around people who know you.
Oh dear.
Some
Should
of
I be
them,
worried?
some of whom may claim not to know you. And one of the things that kept coming up was that you've got an ego. It kept
Actually,
coming
you know
up.
what? Yes.
Now, are you going to deny it, or are you going to embrace it?
I do have an ego. You have to have an ego in order to break the rules and buck the system. Because if everyone tells you this is the right way to do it, this is what you should do, this is the path to take, and you don't believe in it, you have to believe so much in yourself, and you have to have so much of an ego in order to tell yourself, no, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to pursue this path because I'm good at it, and I'll make a success of it. But there's such thing as too much ego. You know, when your whole world revolves around your ego and you think that the entire world and the entire community owes you a living, that's bad ego. But if you use that ego to better your career, if you use that ego to make a difference in the industry, that's good ego.
So you're saying you've got good ego.
I think I have a combination of both. I have my moments.
You know, I think there's nothing wrong with us, anyone, especially in your industry, to once in a while go out and have an ego ride.
Well, you know, fashion is another word for ego.
Yeah, it's euphemism for ego.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad you're being honest about it, because actually this is one of the things that we need to understand. It's often been said in Asian society, ego, words like ego should not be. You know the great debate that Lee Kuan Yew pushed very hard for.
Yeah.
Asian values. You know, we talked about Asian values. And very often, there's a lot of talk about ego is bad, we need to be self-effacing in the name of humility. But in the real world sometimes, you need to push yourself hard.
Yes.
Especially in uncharted areas.
Exactly. And if you've got an opinion and you know your opinion will make a difference, voice it. Because if you keep quiet, society will never change and you'll never progress.
Do you feel that Asians, I would say in particular NUS students, we tend to be very apologetic and we play down our strengths. I have interviewed in various capacities student graduates, graduating students from NUS and SMU, right? I can tell you, the NUS student generally comes across as someone who's very knowledgeable, has very good domain knowledge, but tends to be very self-effacing. The SMU student has an ego, or maybe they're trained to have an ego. Actually, you don't have an ego, but you're trained to project an ego, right? But it works because the ego comes across as confidence. The ego comes across sometimes as having an opinion.
Yep.
When you ask someone a question, you don't want the person to say, this also can, that also can. You want the person to take a stand and say, this is what I believe in, judge me for it.
Yes.
Now,
and at the same time...
is that your experience? I mean, in your industry, you've had to do that, right?
It is to a certain extent. When I first moved to the West, that was a culture shock for me, because for the first time in my life, I experienced racism, for instance. I realized that if you don't stand up for your beliefs, you're going to be pushed to the back, and if you allow yourself to be bullied, you will be bullied. So it made me a stronger person, it made me a more opinionated person, but it also taught me how to push my opinions across. You know, there's no such thing as a wrong opinion. That's what we were taught in practical criticism. But it's how hard you fight for your opinion, how hard you fight for that idea. And that can only come through if you have an ego, if you believe in yourself. You can have the best product. I always tell creatives, you can be the most brilliant creative. If no one knows of your work, if no one knows you exist, then why create?
Yep.
Right.
And maybe we should drop the word ego and
Yeah.
replace it with a more neutral word like attitude. You know,
I like the word ego.
attitude. You like no, but there's a reason why
Yeah.
I'm raising this, because at the end of the day, if you really want to survive in this world, not just in the fashion industry,
Yep.
in the world today, you need to have an opinion.
Yes.
You need to feel about something, and you need to have the courage to say it, even though you may be going against the grain,
Yep.
right? So, is there sort of a need for a culture shift? See, what I'm driving at is in our society, to a large extent, anyone who goes against the grain, against the tide, is often put down and said, look, don't do it. Why are you doing something that has been proven and tested not to work?
Right.
Don't go against it. But you went against it. Many of the people who actually have made a mark are those who at various points in their lives went against the grain.
But there's a very thin line between going against the grain and making a success of it and rocking the boat.
Right.
Right? You want to rock the boat enough for people to take notice, but you don't want to sink the boat. So I think it's because of a few bad hats that have come out and they've just wanted to rock the boat for the sake of rocking the boat, and they're creating holes in the boat just to sink it. That, I don't think, stems from ego. I think that stems from insecurity.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think people who, let's talk about something we all know, bitches. Okay, why do people bitch? I think people bitch to hide an insecurity. Otherwise, you'll be voicing an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do you like this outfit? Yes, I do. No, I don't. But that's your opinion. But if you start to have, if you feel the need to have to put someone down and bitch about that person, I think that stems from insecurity. So you can have an ego, you can have an attitude, you can have an opinion, but you shouldn't bring someone down. You should destroy someone in the process. You should rock the boat, but you shouldn't destroy it.
What if your intention was not to destroy, but inadvertently, in the process, you destroyed the person? Is that wrong?
I think it's wrong.
But how do you know?
But at the same time, I've been guilty of that before.
Didn't Lee Kuan Yew rock the boat?
Yes, he did. Lee Kuan Yew rocked the boat.
Yeah.
Lee Kuan Yew had an ego.
Yeah.
And Lee Kuan Yew worked because he believed in the end product.
But in the process, several boats were rocked.
Yeah.
Yes? But what I'm trying to say is that it's very difficult when you're doing something, even though your intention may be right, to say that this is not intended to rock the boat per se.
Yeah.
But you may inadvertently end up rocking some boats to achieve a goal. I'm sure you had to rock some boats.
It depends on how.
You are known to
yes.
have to shout at models.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Well, not just models. I mean, I think it's
Shout at clients.
Well, that too. Let's save this for the conversation. But you know, I think in certain sectors, I'm public enemy number one as well, because if I feel that a policy does not work, if a policy does not benefit the creatives, then I would voice it. You know, and if I'm telling someone something that they don't want to hear, I have to say it. I have to say it, because otherwise I can't be true to myself, and I won't be able to sleep at night.
Yeah. So you're talking about being yourself, being true to yourself, and not always watching your P's and Q's. Sometimes you have to, I'm sure you have experienced this before, you have to be prepared to be judged. Yes?
Yes.
If you want to take the safe path, I want to avoid being judged.
Yeah.
You may be competent, but not necessarily shine.
That's right.
If you want to shine, you must be prepared to take the heat.
That's right. Yeah.
So can you give us some examples of heat that you've taken?
Okay, going back to the corporate world. I've always been a very vocal opponent of some of the courses that our schools have been teaching, because I feel that some of the courses do not benefit fashion designers. For example, if you're a fashion designer and you are taking a design course, at the end of the day, if you don't run it like a business, if you don't sell clothes, then you don't have much of a business.
Yes.
Right? You're just designing clothes to look beautiful in your home. But a lot of the schools don't introduce business courses, and that's why a lot of fashion designers fail, because they're not taught how to run a business. Yeah. But have you seen any business courses in any of the fashion schools?
No. Well, I guess some have tried.
They're starting to introduce, you know, I'm starting to work very closely with with selected fashion schools, independent fashion schools, to create curriculums for them. And that's why I'm so big into mentorship as well. Because if you don't nurture the next generation, just like I was nurtured, if you don't nurture the next generation, it's going to stop when we pass away. And what kind of continuity will that have? And that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book as well. You know, I didn't write the book because I felt that I had a story to tell. I wrote the book because I was constantly irked by journalists who didn't even know, fashion journalists who didn't even know our Singapore fashion history. And they were constantly citing wrong facts, writing factually incorrect articles. And then I realized that Singapore fashion history has not been documented. And if we don't start the ball rolling, when all of us pass away, a wonderful era would just fade into oblivion.
And it's very interesting what you just said, because I'm sensing a trend in Singapore where our children know a lot more about many other parts of the world, the big cities in the world, because they've traveled to these big cities. They know a little bit less about the region. I'm talking about the immediate region.
Yes.
But they know more about the region than our own country. Let me give you a simple example, right? For some reason, a lot of our school students, when they do the social work, for some reason, a lot of them end up going to Indochina, Batam, Indochina, okay? And then when I spoke to some of these students, I asked them, have you been to Red Hill, Bukit Ho Swee, Kim Tian Road? They drew a blank. They looked at me. I said, do you know there's a MRT station called Red Hill? You should take the MRT train, get off at Red Hill, and take a 2-hour excursion around Red Hill. You'll still find the center parting blocks. You know what center parting blocks are, right? Where the common corridor cuts through the slab, the block.
Yeah.
And it's dark, dingy, and they're single rooms with 7-8 people residing in one flat. And where the parents have a curtain for privacy. But we have this in our own home, in our own backyard, but we become a lot more familiar with what's happening elsewhere.
Do you think it's because the grass is always sexier on the other side?
I don't know what it is, but I do believe that charity should begin at home.
It
I
should.
do believe, and you're big on identity. You
Yes.
talk about identity in your book. You talk about identity in various speeches you've given.
Yeah.
Why is identity so important for you? And what do you think is missing in terms of our identity? In a globalized world, it's very easy for us to lose our identity.
Yep. Well, if you don't have an identity, if I don't have an identity, how am I going to stamp my mark in the industry? How am I going to make a difference? And how am I going to make my shows or my productions stand out and make a difference? Because then I won't be doing it with an opinion. I won't be doing it with a style. I'll be just aping someone's style, you know. And
So what is your identity? In a fashion industry that
Yeah.
is very much dominated by the West, you are clearly not Western.
well,
So how do you have your place in the sun when you're working with these big names and big egos, right?
right.
How do you then have your place there? Surely there are many other people as talented as you.
Right.
What's your identity?
I think it's my view, my point of view, and my perspective and the knowledge that I have. For instance, I first got my break in London. I mean, I'm Chinese. When we go to London, everyone who's an Oriental, everyone who's an Asian, who works in fashion in London has to be Japanese. Because if you're not Japanese, what are you doing in fashion? You have no place in fashion. But being there at the right place, at the right time, during a season when all the designers were doing chinoiserie as a theme.
Yeah.
So I was sold as a novelty. Bring a Chinese show producer over and create a chinoiserie-inspired show for your collection. Make it a press angle. And then they started to realize that I had a vast knowledge of not just my Chinese culture, but geography, for instance. You know, I was the creative director of the Edinburgh Fashion Festival. And when I showed up, I don't think they realized that Daniel Boey was a Chinaman. Right? So when I showed up, to break the ice, I started to tell them about how the city was built and all their geographical features and the physical geography and everything. And they were absolutely amazed that this Chinese man knew more about the city than they did. So it broke the ice, and from there, they realized that I had a point of view, I had an aesthetic. In fact, it was easier, I found it easier to break into the West than breaking here, than making
A mark
an
here.
impact, you know, here in Singapore.
You know, it's very uncanny because the previous speaker here,
Yeah.
Jack Sim,
Uh-huh.
right? Mr. Toilet. He
Yes.
said exactly the same thing. He said he made a mark globally. He became Time Magazine's Man of the Year.
Yeah,
He's in the advisory panel of the World Economic Forum,
right.
right? But he's not recognized in Singapore. He had to struggle when he organized, using his own money, when he organized the first World Toilet Conference in Singapore, right?
Yep.
And he had a problem finding a guest of honor.
Wow. But you see, that goes back to my point that everyone thinks the grass is greener on the other side, but in actual fact, the grass is actually sexier on the other side because, wow, he's worked in London, wow, he's worked in Paris, so we have to bring him back to Singapore. You know, but I'm still the same person. I still have the same skill
No,
set.
but that aside,
Yeah.
it's very interesting that you say the grass is green on the other side, you know, perception.
Yeah,
You feel very, very strongly when you read your book,
yeah,
your passion and your pride of what's made in Singapore comes through
yeah.
in your writing, because that's your writing, right? It's
Yes,
written
it is
by
my
someone.
writing,
It's
yeah.
your writing, and in that writing, you can actually feel your passion and your pride is very palpable. Now, the question is, when are we as a country, as a people, going to be sufficiently confident of our own identity that we don't have to be somebody else, something else?
Yep.
Let's trace back. First, we wanted to emulate the Swiss standard of living. Right? Some of you
Yep.
of a certain vintage would remember that. We wanted to be Switzerland of Asia.
Yeah.
Then we wanted to be Japan. Then we wanted to be a whole host of other countries, God knows where they are. And then we wanted to be, more recently, Silicon Valley of the East. Then when Israel also became very much into IT and technology, we wanted to be we wanted to be Israel of the East. Then we realized it's a bit sensitive where we
Yeah.
are. Then we said we wanted to be London. Giorgio's final one of his recent comments before he stepped down was, we wanted to be London of the East. When are we going to be us? Why do we always have to be somebody of the East? Why can't we just be Singapore? No, this may sound frivolous, an argument, but it actually reflects a certain lack of confidence in our own identity.
It's insecurity.
But why?
Right.
Even though you said in the 70s,
Yeah.
we had the whole Magnificent Seven, right?
That was in the 80s.
80s,
yeah.
but they started in 70s.
Yes.
And 80s,
Yeah.
they started being called that.
Yeah.
We have had many other great bands, singers, and,
Yes.
and many other people in the 70s, even 60s.
Mm.
But why is it that we seem to have this huge chip on our shoulder when it comes to saying we are who we are?
That's a question I don't think anyone can answer. They have to look into themselves.
No, but you are in a
To
good
ask
position to
that.
answer
Yeah.
that because you've been there, you've
Yeah.
done it, you've gone into an area that Singapore is not known for, right?
Yeah.
In the recent past.
Yes.
Singapore is not known for.
Mm.
If you go in and compete on administration efficiency, hey, we've got it, man. But you went into an area that Singapore is not known for, and you made a mark, and yet retaining our identity, right? Now, so from outside in, what do you think is wrong with us?
I think we don't have enough of an ego. We don't have enough of an ego to believe in our own ability. And you need a foreign element to tell you that what's good. You know, but why do we need that? Because there are other countries that want to be the Singapore of the West, the
Yeah.
Singapore of wherever they are. You know, and I don't think we have enough of that confidence and enough of that ego. And the reason why I've got such a strong Singapore identity, the reason why I moved back is because this is where I hone my passion. This is
Yeah.
where I hone my skills.
Yeah.
You know, without that identity, without that passion, I wouldn't be Daniel Boey. I'll just be another show producer with a generic point of view. You know, and I was hired for a certain aesthetic. I was hired for a certain opinion. And again, I was hired for our Singaporean kiasuness because, and this is, I quote my agent in London, what I take one day to do, they take a week to do. So it's great to be kiasu.
And yet our
You know?
productivity is so bad. Well, maybe we're measuring it all wrong.
Yeah.
But
I think we place the importance.
I would put
You
it to
know,
you,
yeah.
one of the problems is our fathers have a problem telling us to our face, I'm proud of you.
It's an Asian thing.
Now, I don't
It
know.
is an
I
Asian
don't know what
thing.
it is, but I think it's important for us to think about it. I mean, my father had a problem, probably because he couldn't find anything good about me, but he had a problem telling me he was proud of me. I had to find out from my uncles and others, you know, because he would boast about me to others. You know, in Asian, call it Asian values, but fathers in particular actually have a problem actually patting the sons in particular on the back and saying, you know, well done, son, you've done well, I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
We've always got to hear it from a third person. So it's actually, in my view, translated into a national psyche.
I think your
When-
father was
when
my father.
Your
I had the
father
same
probably
problem.
learned from my father.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the famous story, right? How they all went to school, walked 5 miles with 5 cents in the pocket.
Yes.
You know, and then
Yeah.
we hear the story. But
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say, the point is, many of our very successful stars,
Yeah.
from Dick Lee to Stephanie Son,
Yeah.
they all had to make big in Taiwan and places like that before they got the real recognition in Singapore.
Yeah.
And I hope that we'll be able to talk a lot more about this, Daniel, because we are very proud of you. You've done well for yourself in a
Thank
place
you.
that's very, but we want to find out more, not so much about the fashion industry,
Yeah. Yeah.
but what is it about us after, and we are going to turn 50 this year
Yeah.
as a independent nation. If after 50 years old, being 50 years, we still have to look over our shoulder, we still need affirmation from other parts of the world, something is not right.
Do you think
And we
it's
need to get to the
because-
bottom of
right.
that.
Do you think it's because we don't have enough role models, or we seek role models from the West?
Or we seek role models who are from Cambridge, Oxford.
Yep.
Maybe we're
Yeah.
narrowing what we define as role models.
Yep.
But with that, let's throw it open. Is it that we don't have enough role models? Or is it because we have defined role models very narrowly? I don't know what it is. But this is a very good opportunity to ask Daniel, who's traveled the world, made a name for himself, fought to make a name for yourself. It wasn't given to you on a platter.
No, it wasn't.
He had to fight to make a name for himself. And yet, for him, what's important is the Singapore identity.
Yeah.
He's very proud of being a Singaporean. Very often, I've met people who have succeeded in the global stage who actually don't want to be associated with Singapore. I've met people like that. You know, I don't blame them, but that's the reality.
But you know, Viswa, I mean, it wasn't a bed of roses as well. And there were many moments when I questioned the fact that I was Singaporean and whether it was working to my detriment, to my disadvantage, that I was Singaporean.
Yeah.
But, you know, you just have to believe in yourself.
And you just have to say, this is who I am.
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
it.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that that word Singapore, that word Singaporean, means so much when you're in a foreign country. When you tell someone, I'm from Singapore, wow, you are? Quick, let's sit down, I have to hire you, you know? And it's got so much value. Why is it that Singaporeans don't value our own kind?
I guess to some extent it's
You know?
human nature. But,
Right.
but let's hear from the,
Okay.
from the audience. Hey, I've tried chewing quite a bit, huh? Now it's your turn.
A very simple,
You
straightforward
can pull the mic
question.
down. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Daniel, who is your role model?
Okay. Growing up, it was Dick Lee. It was Dick Lee solely because, not because of the hype, but I discovered Dick Lee's music. I was going through that phase where I wanted to be a musician. I just come out of that theatre phase, and I was going to Valentine's every weekend to do a mixed cassette tape. You all know what cassette tapes are, right? And I discovered Dick Lee's music, and I started to research more into Dick Lee, and those were the days when there was no internet, and I realized that Dick was a visionary, and the more I learned about him, the more I realized that you've got to market yourself. I learned all about marketing from Dick. I learned all about having to leave Singapore, to make a name for yourself in order to be accepted in your own country. All that I learned from Dick,
Yeah.
and I told myself, if I ever chose a creative career, I would want to be Dick Lee when I grow up. So it was Dick. And I only got to work with Dick late into my career, but I had a great mentor as well. My mentor was Najib Ali.
Najib.
And that was what Najib told me. You know, when I first came into the industry and I had no knowledge of fashion, but I had a background in theatre, I had a background in music, he said, just go out and research as much as you can. If you feel that something is right for you, try it. If you feel it in your gut that it's right for you, do it. If you feel that it's wrong, it's not your style.
Yep.
And that's what I did. So, and Najib and Dick were mavericks. They were visionaries, they were mavericks.
And yet they made time for you.
And well,
They
I mean, they're very generous people, and that's something I'm trying to continue as well. You know, I had great mentors. I'm trying to pass it on.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I hope he answered your question. He did. Wonderful. Okay. If you, I don't know whether you know this, but if you don't ask, I will ask you to ask. Come on, guys. Yes.
Hi, good morning. My name is Evie. I'm an alumni from Biomedical Engineering class of 2014. How did you deal with the pressure of paying back your school fees after you graduated? Were you able to earn enough while you pursue your passion? Thank you.
I see there's an advantage to being born a long time ago, because when I was in university, school fees were quite affordable.
It was about $50 a month.
But
Right, Victor? Oh, in Victor's case, it was about $5.
$5. But it also helped that I worked my way through university. And that was one of the perks of being involved in ECA. You know, when I started organizing like the the dinner dancers and the balls and the rag and flags and jam and hops. I got to meet a lot of people outside of the university. I got to meet a lot of these Singapore mavericks, you know, from the music scene, from the theatre scene, business people, potential sponsors, and they were people who gave me my first breaks. And way back then, unlike the education system now, we only had one exam at the end of the year. So you play and play and play and play until 1 month before the exam, and then you go to church and you pray, right? So it gave us a lot of time to pursue other activities, and from that, I mean, I didn't know that at that time, but every single person I met, every single activity I did was honing my skills towards my future career. You know, and when I first started out, I'm lucky. I never really needed to struggle because I just put the word out that I'm doing this now. And these potential employers would start to call me and give me breaks. And because I was also known in university as a full-time ECA part-time student, yeah, a lot of my schoolmates and my seniors became my first customers, became my first clients. So I was really lucky that I didn't have to struggle in that. My biggest struggle came from acceptance and self-doubt. Whether I was making the right decision, you know, did I squander away all these years of study just to pursue something that people tell me I don't need to study an education to pursue?
Yeah, yeah.
Would I make a success of it? That was the greatest fear. That was self-doubt.
Do you still have self-doubt?
Yes, I do.
I'm sure you
I
do.
do. You know,
You want to share?
if
You want to lie down?
I need a shrink. Yeah, but I do. I mean, when I go into a project, I go into a project with my arms shaking because I always question myself: is this the best I can do? Is this the best concept? You know, and one of the reasons why I surround myself with young people is because these young people are constantly teaching me. I'm still learning today. You know, this whole concept of social media. When I first heard about Twitter, I thought it was an insult because why is someone calling me a twit? Yeah. Instagram, why would someone put your private pictures on the net? You know, but you realize that you've got to keep up with the times. You've got to learn, and that's one of the reasons why the fashion industry in Paris crumbled.
Yeah.
How many of the original couturiers are now still in control of their houses? None. Yeah. Because all their houses have been bought over by big conglomerations because the designers refused to keep up with the times.
And they didn't have business sense.
And they didn't have business sense.
Yeah.
And I realized that, you know, you've got to keep up. Just like when I was in university, I needed to keep up and know what was going on in the outside world. Right now, today, I need to think like the youngsters.
And I guess the word is being aware of the situation.
Yeah, you have to be aware.
So what's your advice to young people today, who are students, for example?
I think just expand your horizons. There's a huge, big world outside beyond your books. You know, books will only teach you so much. And you've got it easy, you know. Nowadays, everything is on the net. Everything you can Google. During our time...
You don't have to go to Red Spot. You don't have to go to Red Spot.
You don't have to go to... Yes. You know...
Remember Red Spot? Does it still... Is
okay,
there
the young
still
people have no idea what we're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, so... And it made us... The whole process of research was more difficult, but it made us hungrier for information. So, yeah, you've got to be hungry. You've got to go out and keep learning all the time. And you will never stop learning. The day I stop learning is the day I die.
Yeah.
Or the day I retire.
But you know, Daniel, the point you made about self-doubt.
Yeah.
This is something that I've heard said to me by a lot of people that you wouldn't imagine there would be an iota of self-doubt in them. I mean, let me share with you. I used to, in my previous avatar, I used to be the producer of the National Day rally speech by the Prime Minister. And I had the dubious honor of being the producer of the last 4 years of Lee Kuan Yew's National Day rally. 1985 to 1990, right? And I tell you, in 88, sorry, because he would come for a rehearsal the night before. It was at Kallang Theatre. It was on a Sunday. usually the third Sunday of August, and he would come on Saturday night, the night before, with Mrs. Lee,
Yeah.
from 9:30 p.m. to about 1 a.m. He didn't have a script. It was 3 hours off the cuff. But he would come there and he would do the final round of sparring on ideas, just to be absolutely sure that he got it right.
Yep.
Right? Now, I was in my 20s as a producer. It was baptism of fire, standing there on a stage, having to stand your ground with him when he was Prime Minister. And he's sparring with you on issues from meritocracy to I remember one of the heated arguments I had with him when I was 28
Right.
was on graduate mother scheme. Of course, he went on to talk about it. But I remember in 88, I asked him this question. I said, why do you do this? Why do you do this every year when you can actually wing it? If anyone can wing it, it's him.
Yeah.
And he said two things to me. One, he said, because you're only as good as your last performance. I'll never forget that. You're only as good as your last performance. And then, as I walked him to the car, he stopped at one point, he looked at me and he said, because I am not sure whether I'll make it, whether I'll be able to get my message across. And that's why I do the sparring,
Right.
to be sure. That's self-doubt. You wouldn't associate Lee Kuan Yew with self-doubt. But I think it is that self-doubt, for me, it is that self-doubt that prevented complacency. That self-doubt that made him work hard again and again and again and came for a rehearsal. So self-doubt is not a bad thing, right?
It's not a bad thing. And I think a lot of people don't realize that I don't have this wonderful magic wand
Yes.
that I wave and the entire show just comes together. You know, research is so important.
Would you agree that
Preparation
if
is
tomorrow
important.
you go out there and do a big performance and it flops, what's the impact?
You know, he was right. You're only as good as your last job. So you've got to constantly keep up to top your last performance.
And the better you are, the harder it gets, right?
That's right. Yeah. But it's a challenge. You know, the day it becomes easy for me is the day I retire. Because it's not a challenge
We'll come to
anymore.
retirement in a while, but in the meantime, there's a question
Okay.
from the students out there.
Uh-huh.
Can we put it up, please? How would you describe our Singapore style? This is broad stroke question. Huh? How would you describe our Singapore style?
I'm going to answer that question with a question.
Okay.
Do we have a Singapore style? I think in order for us to have a Singapore style, I mean, look at the Miss Universe competition. Every single year we struggle with our national costume. Every single year we struggle with our identity.
Hey, some of the national costumes are terrible. Huh?
If that is our Singapore style, I think we should all move out of Singapore. Right? Yeah. But the fact that we have to have a committee to sit down and tell us what a Singapore style is, that is not a Singapore style. A Singapore style is something that has to evolve organically.
Yeah.
You know, it's like Chinatown. Why is Chinatown the way it is right now? Because Chinatown, some brilliant guy had this idea.
STB.
Ah, you said it, I didn't. Came in and had this brilliant idea to turn Chinatown into this nice sanitized theme park. And that's what it is right now. It's a theme park. As opposed to like Little India, which is still organic. It's got the sights, the sounds, the spices.
And the aromatherapy.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, that's a difference, you know. We don't have a Singapore style because people are trying to identify that Singapore style for us.
Instead of letting it evolve.
Instead of letting it evolve. You know, if I've been asked this question before. If you were to dress our Miss Universe competition, our contestants, in a national dress, what would it be? And I said, I'll turn the job down.
Yeah.
Because you can't design a national costume. You know, you've got to take the cultures. If she's a Chinese contestant, what is her national costume? If you take an Indian contestant, what is her national costume? Does that make it less Singaporean? No, because we're a melting pot. You know, you can't take a bit of a sari, a bit of a cheongsam, a bit of a sarung kebaya and turn it into a Roja. Roja, that's our
Roja,
Singapore style,
yeah.
right?
Although I must say, recently I went for a Hindu wedding,
Uh-huh.
and there was the bridesmaid, a maid of honor, I think. She wore a sari. She's Chinese.
Right.
She wore a sari, and it was a very interesting sari. It was purpose made, right? It was a sari, clearly, but with Chinese print.
Ah.
And it actually looked really good. You know, very nice Chinese print. It was silk sari, Chinese print. I mean, I think it is possible, and I asked her how she did it. She went and custom made it.
See, that's because she didn't overthink it.
She didn't. She didn't
Right.
form a committee,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
She custom made it, you know. And I guess that brings me to this question. We talk about skills. Let me ask you, Daniel, more than skills, do you not think what is transferable are your abilities? And how would you differentiate ability
Yes.
from skills?
Okay. I think skills can be learned. Skills can be picked up. But abilities, it's that innate inner sense, the ability to pick up a talent from a pool of people. That's ability. That's not a skill. Ability can't be taught. Skills can be taught. And I think you need, in order to succeed, you need to have as much ability as skill, which is why creatives, I think, are born and not made. No matter how much you try to be a creative person, if you don't have that ability, you don't have that sixth sense, you don't have that aesthetic, you can't learn aesthetic, you can't learn good taste.
Would you say that ability, which is more innate and difficult to measure, is underplayed in our society?
I think it is so underplayed because there's so much emphasis placed on grades, placed on skill improvement, but that's not the be-all and end-all of your ability. You know, you can study a subject from cover to cover, be an expert at it, and still not have the ability to do it well.
And ability is linked to attitude as well?
I think it's linked to attitude, yeah.
So
And
what would you
it's-
say is your strongest ability that had a strong bearing on your success? Not skill, ability.
I think it would be a mix of resilience and ego,
Okay.
because I needed to have the ego to believe that I could do it, and I needed to have the ego to believe that I was good at it, and have the ability to spot talent. You know, even right down to the way I run my company. I run a very, very small creative agency. You know, fashion is just one aspect of what I do. I've got a design arm, I've got a digital arm, I work with people who are curators, but I run it like a family because it's a family of creatives. Because you come together, you mustn't be afraid to sit down and thrash your ideas out and fight for what you believe in. And everyone can do each other's jobs. You might not be an expert at it, but everyone has that sixth sense. Everyone's got that aesthetic. And resilience. You know, if you don't have that resilience to last how many years it takes in order for you to make a success, if you don't have that business sense to recognize the fact that you have to leave Singapore in order to make a name for yourself and come back and be celebrated as a hero, then I think it's going to be very difficult. And I think that was what contributed to my success. And in fact, the fact that I'm a success isn't something that I've bestowed upon myself. I mean, Godfather of fashion, what is a Godfather of fashion? You know, I think I'm a success because people tell me I'm a success. People come up to me and say, I was touched by your show. I enjoyed that. I organize an event, I design something to touch people, not to touch myself. You know,
And that's reward.
And that's important. That is so important. You know, if I organize an event for a client and nobody understands it except me, then I'm so blinkered. I'll be blinkered. It's like this. I wrote about this in my book. When I was in secondary school, I had a very forward-thinking art teacher who told me, think outside the box, think out of the box. So for my art exam, I painted a piece of paper completely black. And my theme was, this is what you see when you close your eyes. I failed the exam, right? So maybe I was too far out of the box, you know, but okay, you can think out of the box, but if people can't relate to that idea, then it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
And that taught me a very valuable lesson. I can go off tangent and create this most amazing show, which I think is the best show on the face of this earth, but if nobody can relate to it, then it's a bad show.
It's not relevant.
It's not relevant. It has to be relevant. And there's a very, it's a balancing act. You know, you've got to push your ideas through, but you've got to keep your ideas relevant as well without losing your identity, if that makes sense.
Actually, it doesn't need to make sense.
Yeah?
I feel that if you want everything you do in life to all the time make sense, your life may not make that much of sense down the road. No, because it's a charted path, and today, uncertainty is a certainty. So if you chart it this way, your life down the road may not make sense because you charted it because of extrinsic motivation and not because of intrinsic motivation.
Yep.
And for me, that's the strongest takeaway from this session.
Right.
I admire you. I admire you because you took the path not taken at a time when it was not fashionable. You took the path not taken at a time when the risks were a lot higher. You also took the path not taken when you knew that you had many other choices that were safe.
Yep.
And I think in that sense, you are a huge role model,
Thank
not
you.
only for people who are students today, but people like me who perhaps are contemplating making shifts in our lives, career moves, you know, and we all are looking for inspiration. And sometimes we always look far away when the inspiration might just be next to you. So on that note, I'd like to say a big thank you to you, Daniel,
Thank you.
for inspiring us, and we are very proud to say that you're one of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And
Ladies
thank
and
you.
gentlemen,
Thank you very
Daniel
much.
Boey. Let's take a good picture. You know, this is for your album because you're standing next to a really good, handsome man. How's that for ego?
I know.
Thank you.
It's going to be the cover
Thank
of my
you.
next book.
Make sure the lighting is good.
yeah.
Well, here's a token of
Oh,
appreciation.
thank you. Oh, wow.
And a picture taken earlier with me.
Yes.
Ego. All right.
So I've got the cover of my next book already.
Yeah. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. And I'll hold that for a while. This is where, you know, you have to write lovely things about me.
Okay.
Thank you. To be announced. That's not following. To be announced the next one. Better not. Hmm? Why? Well, you know, so many things are fluid. Maybe I shouldn't. So why don't you read it?
It just says, keep the passion alive and always believe.
Well, that's good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Daniel is going to be signing. If you buy, he'll sign. Okay? And we're not charging. So it's really up to you and Daniel. But he's agreed most kindly to sign, to autograph the books. So as we go out there and have some refreshments, some of you may want to buy the book and get it signed. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And if you have any questions, okay, I may have an ego, but I'm also very friendly, so. Thank you.
Thank you.